Have you ever heard of
zombie debt?
What is it and how can you avoid it? This is Matt from Let's Not Be Fools, the channel that brings you financial and other advice. Click to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Let's talk about
zombie debt.
If you have an old debt that you are unable to pay for whatever reason, after a few years, the state you live in may allow you to not have to pay off that debt. That is, the companies that you owe are no longer allowed to pursue you for that debt. But there are loopholes that these companies used to try to trick you into paying that debt off and reviving it, that is, bringing it back from the dead, and that's why we call it zombie debt. So one trick these companies may use after the debt is past the statute of limitations of collectability is to call you and harass you and say, hey, we'll stop calling you if you make a little bit of a payment towards your debt. Let's say just make a $50 payment towards the debt you owe us and we'll stop giving you collection calls. But what that does is revive that whole debt, whereas it was out of the statute of limitations and it was past that and you didn't know it, but by paying that little bit of amount, you revived that whole debt and the company can still come after you for that whole debt from then on. So be careful of that. If you're getting collection calls and they try to trick you into doing that, don't fall for it. This tactic is actually known as duping in the industry, so they're duping you into reviving your own loan, so don't fall for it. A second tactic these collection companies may use is to send you a letter and say, hey, we'll settle your debt for pennies on the dollar. Just send us, $10 of the $100 you owe us and we'll settle it right there. So they don't give you calls necessarily, they just send a letter to your house and you pay that $10 thinking that, okay, that's going to settle everything, but really that revives the debt just like in the first tactic, and then you're really on the hook for that whole $100 or whatever you owe. A third collections tactic may be that you're going to get a credit card offer in the mail just to say, hey, we're going to give you a fresh start on your credit. Here's a new credit card, even unsecured. Get this credit card and you'll be on your way to establishing a better credit rating in the future. But really, the payments made against this credit card are just to revive payments on your old debt. And this is something that really did happen. Now, I think the US government stopped this from happening, but it was another tactic that was used by some of these sleazy collection companies. A fourth tactic that was used by one collection company was to sue the person who owed the money, and they had their wages garnished. And even though it was just like less than $1 per pay period that was taken out of the wages, that revived the whole debt. Now, I believe a court threw that out because the garnishment of the wages was involuntary, so it was not a voluntary payment by the person who had the debt, so it was thrown out as invalid. But I just want you to be aware of the lengths these collection companies will go to revive an old debt, even if it's past the statute of limitations. So they're trying to revive that old debt, they're trying to turn it into a zombie debt that comes back to life to haunt you, and these are things that you need to keep in mind, and don't fall for these tactics. Be sure you research these things before you get these sort of settlement offers, because they can really do more harm than good for you. The collection companies are simply buying these debts from credit card companies for pennies on the dollar, and they're just going to throw everything against the wall that they can to see what sticks. They're going to try every tactic they can to collect what they can from this pool of debt that they have. Some of the tactics may be legal, some of them may be illegal, some may be in a very gray area that has to go to court to be settled out. So just keep these things in mind. If you owe an old debt and you think it's gone and past the statute of limitations, maybe it is, and you got to keep it that way. That's all I've got for now.
Have a great day.